I'm a creative determined to survive the AI revolution. I'm learning about AI, and you can too. Some information about hardware. So here's the deal. While open source software is totally free to install and use, getting the hardware to run it locally, well, that's going to cost you anywhere from a few hundred to a few $1,000s. If you're a gamer or someone who already knows how to build your rig, then congrats, you're already ahead of the game. You can head over to Micro Center or scour the internet for deals, and you will probably score the most budget-friendly option. But if you're a hardware newbie like I was, then don't sweat it. You can always go to the pre-built route. Just be sure to do your homework, and by homework I mean customer service, call them or talk to a rep before dropping big money. In other words, do your research. You can ask them all the questions about what you're getting, what happens if something breaks, whether their customer support will ghost you if something goes wrong. It just might be worth the extra effort to get somebody on the line and perhaps jot down the name of the rep, the date of your phone call, whatever else you discuss, just in case you need it later. Now, if you're not super keen on running everything locally, there is always a cloud. You can rent a GPU, use platforms that host AI software online, but we're not going to do that here since we're all about local offline AI powerhouses. So no cloud talk today. So what hardware do you need? Well, let's break it down with some key questions first, such as what do you want your AI to create? Are we talking about still images, 2D, maybe 3D models, videos, text, music, or perhaps all of the above? Are you planning to fine-tune the AI for your own personal, private offline use? Maybe to train based on your own artistic style? Or are you gearing up to customize models for a specific task? And how much do you want to future-proof this baby so it stays relevant for the next few years? The best thing you can do is figure out exactly how you want to use AI before you make any big purchases, because different tools need different hardware, so strategy is key. But since you want a quick rundown of the must-haves, here is a list, and I will dig into each one in more detail. Well, when it comes to AI, the GPU is the star of the show. It's your AI powerhouse. You're going to need an Nvidia GPU. And why is that? Well, because AI is basically a math-heavy marathon, especially if you're doing things like 3D graphics or animation. Nvidia GPUs are built to handle this heavy-duty computations required by AI applications using a software called CUDA. In other words, Compute Unified Device Architecture. This is Nvidia software that speeds up applications and does multiple calculations simultaneously, rather than in sequence, and most AI applications are built upon CUDA. The big question then is which Nvidia GPU to get. Well, that all boils down to VRAM, also known as video memory. Every AI software uses a base model or even multiple models, and these models will not even load if you don't have enough VRAM. So the golden rule here is the more VRAM, the better. So let's say you're doing only still images or rudimentary chatbots, and by rudimentary, I mean that it's less effective than ChatGPT 3.5. So you can perhaps get away with a GPU that has less VRAM, such as 8 gigabytes, and there are some tricks to generate with even less VRAM, but let's be real, it's much more of a headache than it's worth. And if you're making animations or music, well, you will need at least 16 gigabytes of VRAM, but honestly, 24 gigabytes would be much better, especially with video. Now, if you're training or fine-tuning AI models, well, you will need anywhere between 24 to 32 gigabytes VRAM. The top dogs in the market right now are Nvidia RTX 3090 and 4090, both packing 24 gigabytes of VRAM. And if you really want to pack that VRAM, well, you could opt for multiple GPUs and train your custom models to your heart's content. Now, let's say you have lower VRAM. Well, you will brace yourself for some time-consuming workarounds because less VRAM equals slower generation, so you will pay with your time. And if you're trying to figure out exactly how much VRAM you will need for specific AI tools, well, you would probably have to dig around each tool's GitHub page or documentation. So it's not always crystal clear, but that's where you will find the info. For example, if we go to the AudioCraft GitHub page, It says you will need at least 16 gigabytes of VRAM for their medium-sized models. And let's say you want to do some local training or fine-tuning of a text generation model. Well, if you go to anything LLM, it says that to do that, you will need at least 16 gigabytes of VRAM. Now let's go to the second important component in hardware, which is CPU, also known as the brain of your computer. This is your computer's main decision maker, processing all of your commands. For AI, aim for at least a multi-core processor with a minimum of 12 cores. I'm an Intel person myself, but I've heard that AMD is also solid. For example, you could go for the i7 or AMD Ryzen 7. And if you're doing AI training or you're doing 3D visuals, for example, you would definitely want to go for a more powerhouse CPU with possibly 24 cores like the Intel i9-13900 or even the newer i9-14900. Now let's talk about memory or RAM. This is your computer's short-term memory where it stores data for quick access. For text or still image generation, you can skate by with about 32 gigabytes RAM, but again, more is better. And if you're training AI, you'll need at least 64 gigabytes RAM to avoid bottlenecks. Moving on to storage, there are two main options here, your SSD, which is a solid-state drive, versus your HDD, which is your hard disk drive. And you will probably need both. SSDs are the best of the storage in terms of their fast write-read speeds and lower access times. So you will want to store your AI software, your AI models and programs on the SSD drive for the speedy performance. I would go for perhaps around 1.5 to 2 or more terabytes for your SSD because those AI models do take up a lot of space. For example, they could be anywhere between 6 to 24 gigabytes each, and you will probably need a variety of models. Referring to HDD now, those are cheaper and slower disk drives, but they're great for archiving your art, video, music, and backups. So let's say you're done with a project that you're doing, you can store your creative project, those generations, on your HDD. You can also use external drives, whether they're SSD or HDD. If they're HDD, they are handy for backups. This kind of extra storage could be very useful when things get a bit crowded. For example, if you are generating video or music, especially if you're upscaling video, you will certainly chew through that storage very fast. I have 6 terabytes HDD for my generated content or archived backups, and I also have 2 terabytes solid-state drive or SSD for my operating system, my AI models and AI programs so that they run very quickly. Now there are other components, and I'm not going to go into great detail with them since I do not build my own rig, but you will want to make sure that your motherboard is compatible with all your other components. For example, the motherboard should have PCI Express connections for the GPU, and you want to make sure that you don't forget cooling fans, the case, power supply, and a monitor if you don't already have one. One note regarding your power supply unit, GPUs love to gobble power, so when calculating how much power your setup needs, make sure to include the CPU, all GPUs running, and your other components. Coming up next, in the next few videos, I will show you how to install the software, including setting up virtual environments. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss a beat. Until next time.